Hey guys, welcome to part 13 of What If Yuji Was an Uchiha. Last time we left off after recruiting Hikari for the Culling games and coming up with a plan to save Uzumaki. With everyone caught up, let's begin. Outside the colony, Yuji and Megumi discuss the potential threat posed by incarnated sorcerers from past eras. Megumi explains that these sorcerers have different mindsets and may not be open to negotiation. Yuji emphasizes the need to be cautious of cursed spirits, especially at night. They hope that modern sorcerers like Uzumaki will be more willing to talk. They approach the barrier wall to the Tokyo No. 1 colony and Kogan appears to greet them, announcing the deadly Culling game within. Megumi declares his participation, eager to save his sister, and they enter without reviewing the rules. Inside, they are abruptly separated, leaving Yuji disoriented and wondering about Megumi's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Rin notices Yuji falling from the sky and signals Hanayu, indicating their readiness to take advantage of the newcomers. Hanayu launches a surprise attack at Yuji, but he anticipates it and manages to thwart her by grabbing onto her and threatening to resist unless she lands safely. However, she underestimates Yuji's resolve and continues flying, prompting him to shock her into descending rapidly. Yuji ultimately crashes into a building but remains unfazed, surprising Hanayu. He retaliates by using debris charged with cursed energy to defeat her. Meanwhile, Haba, Hanayu's partner, confronts Yuji, but he swiftly incapacitates him with a fireball jutsu. Rin, observing the situation, approaches Yuji and reveals information about Higuruma's whereabouts. Grateful for the assistance, Yuji heads to the theater where Higuruma is located. Upon meeting Higuruma, Yuji discovers him lounging in a bathtub and exhibiting eccentric behavior. Despite the odd encounter, Yuji attempts to negotiate with Higuruma to use his points to alter the Culling game's rules. Higuruma declines Yuji's request, expressing interest in the possibilities presented by the Culling game. Disillusioned with society's legal system, he sees the game's rules as offering a different perspective on justice. Despite acknowledging the imperfections of the game, Higuruma is intrigued by its concept of punishment without traditional legal proceedings. Yuji tries to convince Higuruma of the true nature of the Culling game, but Higuruma remains skeptical. He believes the game celebrates permanence, a concept Yuji struggles to comprehend. Frustrated, Yuji demands to use Higuruma's points, but Higuruma challenges him by asking if he has ever taken a life out of anger. With a gavel in hand and his Shikigami at his side, Higuruma stands defiantly, indicating his readiness for confrontation. Higuruma defiantly faces his opponent, and Yuji notices the Shikigami appearing by his side. Aware of Higuruma's history of eliminating at least 20 players, Yuji remains on the defensive, anticipating an attack. Suddenly, Higuruma activates his domain expansion, deadly sentencing, transforming the surroundings into a courtroom with guillotines looming ominously. Yuji attempts to launch an attack before the domain's rules take hold, but his efforts are thwarted as his movements are restrained within the domain, forbidding violence. As Judgeman, the Shikigami, begins to accuse Yuji of entering the Magi Vegas Pachinko parlor underage, Yuji initially struggles to understand the situation until he recalls the incident. Higuruma explains that Judgeman possesses comprehensive knowledge of everyone within the domain, and the verdict will be solely based on the arguments presented in the courtroom. Additionally, Higuruma has submitted evidence for deliberation by Judgeman, though Yuji remains unaware of its contents. Now, Yuji must defend his case and dispel all doubt to secure an innocent verdict from Judgeman. The trial-based cursed technique prompts Yuji to realize that he's being prosecuted by an actual lawyer. The absence of a fatal attack in Higuruma's domain triggers a recollection of Master Tenjin's advice. Tenjin had explained that domain expansion was more prevalent among sorcerers of the past because it didn't guarantee hits. Instead, it compelled targets inside to adhere to the rules of the cursed technique. Domains with surefire attacks required significant skill and became rarer over time. Yuji deduces that Higuruma's domain falls into this category, meaning it can't physically harm him, and relies on Higuruma explaining the rules beforehand. Continuing to explain the rules, Higuruma states that each participant has one chance to make a statement. Yuji will go first, followed by Higuruma's rebuttal based on the evidence he received. After both parties have presented their cases, Judge Man will deliver a verdict. When Yuji inquires about the consequences of being found guilty, Higuruma hesitates, offering three options: silence, confession, or denial. Surprised by the allowance for false statements, Yuji questions if lying in court is acceptable. Higuruma argues that trials would be unnecessary if everyone were truthful and urges Yuji to make his statement promptly as Judge Man grows impatient. Yuji carefully deliberates on his defense strategy, aware of his actual actions at the pachinko parlor. Lying seems like his best option, but he's uncertain about the evidence against him. He weighs Higuruma's options and settles on denying the charges, claiming he entered the parlor solely to use the restroom. However, Higuruma swiftly counters with a damning photo of Yuji engaged in a cash exchange inside the parlor. This undermines Yuji's defense, as Higuruma points out that Yuji's own admission of entering the parlor contradicts his claim of innocent intent. Despite Yuji's attempts to argue, Higuruma clarifies that while there may not be explicit laws against minors entering such establishments, it still constitutes unlawful entry due to the parlor's regulations. Yuji protests vehemently, denouncing the trial as unjust due to his belief that there was no defense capable of securing an innocent verdict. However, Higuruma's revelation about Japan's legal intricacies regarding minors and gambling provides a glimmer of hope. Yuji realizes that since the evidence only implicates him in a cash exchange, he could have simply denied any association with the Magi Vegas pachinko parlor to challenge the charges. Despite this newfound perspective, Judge Man delivers a damning guilty verdict, condemning Yuji to confiscation. As the domain dissipates and Judge Man vanishes, Yuji's senses remain unchanged. Suddenly, Higuruma launches a swift attack, flinging his gavel toward Yuji. Reacting with agility, Yuji evades the projectile. Attempting to unleash a Phoenix Fireball jutsu in retaliation, Yuji is stunned when nothing happens, realizing his cursed technique has been nullified. Undeterred, Higuruma closes the distance, summoning his gavel back with a surge of cursed energy, and unleashes a powerful strike toward Yuji. Anticipating the attack with his Sharingan's heightened senses, Yuji employs a cross-block, bolstering his strength with cursed energy to repel the blow before retaliating with a forceful kick. Bewildered by Yuji's resilience, Higuruma demands an explanation, prompting Yuji to attribute it to his Sharingan being a separate technique from his elemental release technique. Despite Higuruma's relentless assault, Yuji maintains his composure, evading each strike with agility. As Higuruma's onslaught intensifies, Yuji attempts a counterattack, but Higuruma adapts his gavel's form, ensnaring Yuji's elbow with a flexible hook before hurling him aside. Undeterred, Yuji regroups, facing Higuruma's renewed assault with determination. As Higuruma morphs his gavel into a staff, Yuji seizes the opportunity to engage, dodging each blow and seizing the staff's midpoint. However, Higuruma swiftly manipulates the weapon's form, causing it to vanish from Yuji's grip. In a daring maneuver, Yuji strikes the tub, however Higuruma swings his gavel at it, shattering it and unleashing a deluge of water and debris. Yuji shields his face as his opponent erupts from behind the screen of water, Higuruma looming over him with his gavel increased to a massive size. Despite the overwhelming force of the attack, Yuji holds his ground, pushing back against the weight of the blow. Sensing an opportunity, Yuji demands a retrial, instantly transporting them both inside the domain. Higuruma observes Yuji's growing comprehension of his technique, realizing that his opponent is beginning to grasp its intricacies. With Judge Man's previous guilty verdict hanging over him, Yuji knows that refusing to confess outright would grant him the chance for a retrial that cannot be refused. In the subsequent trial, Judge Man announces a grave accusation against Yuji, mass murder in Shibuya on the 31st of October 2018. The mention of Sukuna's rampage during the Shibuya incident shocks Yuji to his core. As Higuruma receives the evidence, Yuji is faced with a pivotal decision. Before Higuruma even has the chance to speak, Yuji makes a startling admission. He confesses his guilt without hesitation. Refusing to deny the truth of what transpired, Yuji shocks Higuruma with his unwavering honesty. In a rage, bleeding from its eyes with fury, Judge Man declares Yuji guilty once again, condemning him to both confiscation and the death penalty as punishment for his crimes. The transformation of Higuruma's gavel into the executioner's sword heralds a shift in the trial's intensity, imbuing the weapon with lethal power capable of ending Yuji's life with a single stroke. For Higuruma, his perception of humanity is tinged with cynicism, viewing empathy as a means to understand the inherent weaknesses within individuals. To him, this vulnerability is not just a facet of humanity but a pervasive ugliness that permeates everyone, including Yuji. Despite any outward displays of improvement or aspirations for betterment, Higuruma sees only fragility and imperfection. In his eyes, the act of empathizing with others merely serves to illuminate the darkness within, revealing a vast expanse of emptiness and inadequacy. For Higuruma, this stark realism shapes his worldview, casting a shadow over any semblance of hope or redemption within the human condition. As Yuji seeks to maintain distance from Higuruma, he improvises, hurling theater chairs in rapid succession and tossing his Jutsu high jacket to create diversions. Seizing the momentary distraction, Yuji maneuvers behind Higuruma, using his hoodie to momentarily obstruct the lawyer's vision. With swift precision, Yuji delivers a sweeping kick, sending Higuruma crashing through the wall. However, Higuruma swiftly recovers, attempting to retaliate with a stabbing motion. Yet, Yuji anticipates the attack, deftly sidestepping and countering with a powerful uppercut. In the midst of the confrontation, a sudden recollection grips Higuruma, a memory triggered by Yuji's confession to a crime he didn't commit. As the evidence from the retrial floods his consciousness, Higuruma grapples with the realization that Yuji was not responsible for the atrocities attributed to Sukuna. Despite Yuji's insistence on bearing the burden of guilt, Higuruma acknowledges the absence of voluntary control over Sukuna's actions, exonerating Yuji of any wrongdoing. Reluctantly deactivating the executioner's sword, Higuruma concedes to Yuji's innocence. Yet, Yuji remains steadfast in his self-condemnation, attributing the tragedy to his perceived weakness. In a moment of clarity, Higuruma recalls his initial motivations for pursuing law and recognizes the plight of other vulnerable individuals in need of aid. Moved by this realization, he grants Yuji access to his points, signaling a shift towards compassion and redemption. As Higuruma instructs Kogan to implement the new rule allowing point transfers in the Culling game, Yuji anxiously awaits the outcome. To his relief, the rule is swiftly approved, and Higuruma promptly transfers one of his points to Yuji, ensuring their immunity from cursed technique removal for a significant period. With the immediate crisis averted, Higuruma bids farewell and begins to depart the theater. However, Yuji, grappling with a sense of urgency and determination, implores him to join their cause against the Culling game. Yet, Higuruma reveals his past transgressions, admitting to the gravity of his actions and his intention to face the consequences by turning himself in once the barrier dissipates. Despite Yuji's insistence, Higuruma remains resolute in his decision to reckon with his past deeds independently. Citing his discomfort with the potential repercussions of his presence on Yuji's journey. With a heavy heart, Yuji watches as Higuruma exits the theater, leaving him to reflect on the bittersweet nature of their victory amidst the ongoing turmoil of the Culling game. Meanwhile, defeated with dignity, Regi tells his Kogan to transfer all 41 of his points to Megumi. The benefactor isn't so pleased, but Regi tells him to just consider it a good deed before death. He adds that he's just a spectator and isn't close with Kenjaku at all. With his final words, Regi tells his executioner to let fate toy with him before dying like a fool. With Regi's death moments later, Megumi receives 5 points from his Kogan. Elsewhere, Yuta decides to get back to his mission and asks Ryu to hand over his points. Ryu is initially confused, but his Kogan explains that a new rule was added to the game that allows players to transfer points to one another. Ryu believes he understands why Yuta spared their lives now and asks if he would have killed them without that rule. Yuta suggests it was a possibility, but he smiles and tells Ryu to just be grateful to his comrade. Thanks to the point transfers from Uro and Ryu on top of the points he gained from eliminating Druv and Kururushi, Yuta has now scored 190 points. Meanwhile, in the colony Hikari was sent to, Hikari beat Kashimo, making a deal with him to gain his 200 points in return for allowing him to fight Sukuna. Okay guys, this is the end of this part of What If Yuji Was an Uchiha. If you enjoyed, leave a like and comment, as well as subscribing with notifications enabled. With that out the way, this is Demonic Saiyan saying bye.